Yep. And if you want a starting point, I'll put a quick plug in. I don't remember the exact date of the show, but I think it was the original. Was the show Southeast First? Was it titled that? But the show where AC Mack won the IWTV World Title from Alex Shelley, who Alex Shelley goes anywhere unless he's like explicitly working super heel. People love him, because it's Alex Shelley. He's great. He's a nice guy. Oh my God, that crowd did not they did not want to see Alex Shelley win that match. They were very much in favor of their local guy, AC Mack, who made history and became like not just an openly gay world champion, but just this incredibly it's hard to explain because AC is he's got this swagger about him and he's got this. He can arrogance at times, but at the same time, everyone knows he's legit and they're pulling for him. And just such a really likable guy. I mean, he's justifiably taken off and enjoying his retirement from the ring now, but it was such a great moment. I can't say enough about it.
AC Mack, it was funny because we basically had to turn him babyface because people started cheering him anyway.
Exactly.
It was that whole thing with the Four Horsemen and Ric Flair. They're so cool and they're so good that you just want to root for him.
It's not unlike what happened in MLW with Alex Kane, if you want to think about it like that, because that was very much a heel act, but
it's intended to be. And you know what? I'm a booker who is very reactive to certain things. I'm not going to make people, if you have people cheering for something, why am I going to fight my own crowd? Because a lot of wrestling is, and you know exactly what I'm talking about with that. You throw it out there and you see how people take it and react to it. Like similar with Adam Priest. I never turned Adam Priest babyface. And when I kind of did, it was like, all right, Adam, you're gonna wrestle heels, but you're still Adam Priest. I don't want you to be all clapping, hands and kissing babies and woo, root for me. No, you're the same guy. You're just wrestling mostly heels now. So AC Mack turned and. That was, Southeast First was 2 years ago. It was January 2022. The month before, Alex Shelley was defending against John Wayne Murdoch, and that match had actually not happened yet, and we were live on the stream. And it was interesting because we're like, all right, well, he's also got a match with Ruby Soho later that weekend, I think. And it was like, well, we don't know who's technically, obviously, we know it was going to be, but we announced the match and we got in the ring, myself and Dylan Hales, Dylan representing IWTV and me representing Action. We announced that the next show was not going to be an Action show. It was going to be an IWTV Super Show. And the main event was AC Mack challenging for the Independent Wrestling World Championship. And he said he was really, really emotional in the ring just on the announcement. He wasn't even talking. He's like, and I'm like, oh, because he's just whispering to me in the ring, just say it, just say it, just say it. He wanted to be out there and get it over with because he knew this was the moment. And then a month later, Southeast First was, it was kind of one of those mixtape shows. We had a lot of different promotions come in and put on matches and have performers. And it was the only show I've had that was like a playoff atmosphere. It was like a playoff NBA or MLB game. The closest thing I could think of it was when the Braves a couple years ago were in the World Series. Just the buzz. There was an actual buzz all night. AC Mack could have. I mean, I don't care who walked through the curtain. The fact that it was Alex Shelley, he was getting booed. It didn't matter what he did. He was getting booed because this is our guy. He had won the Scenic City Invitational 5 months before, cut a blistering promo how it was going after the world title, and we finally were able to make it come through and make it happen. And people were really, really behind him. So, it was one of those type of things where it didn't matter how good the match was. It was about the finish and the emotion and everything that they did. Emotionally rather than move wise. It was a good match, but it didn't matter. Place exploded on the finish. And I mean, and that set the tone for the Southeast First Uncharted Territory run later that summer, which was, down the Southeast was a pretty big deal because we were live weekly on IWTV. And there's a lot of new talent who came and got exposure off of that. So yeah, Southeast First was, I will say, probably the biggest event, and I'm still so proud of it. I was going for days, weeks, months afterwards, just being like, I wish I could live in Southeast First. Just that raw emotion.
And it's, you know, I should, and I was kind of unclear on details, but AC Mack was actually number 25 in the PWI 500, based, you know, largely on that win and then the title reign that he had. Not just an openly gay world champion, but the first one, you know, if we're not thinking in terms of like tag team champions, that sort of, but like a male world champion, solo world champion, as like recognized by PWI, as recognized broadly by the wrestling world at large. He made history. But also just, again, this personal investment that crowd had in him and his journey. It's just really, you know, even knowing this, you can go and you can watch that match, you know exactly what's going to happen, you know, not the exact finish, but you know how it's going to end, and it's not going to ruin it one bit, because it's a moment. So
and,
yeah,
and you know
special.
what's funny about that is we only found out, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, and AC did an interview. I believe, I'm probably have some detail wrong. I think AC did an interview that week before the match, and they told him, you know, if you win, you're the first openly gay world champion. Now, of course, being openly gay at the time, I'm not going to get into it, because if somebody was, you know, not out of the closet or whatever, but he was, you know, it wasn't necessarily part of his character, but he was very openly gay his entire run. Everybody knows and knew. And that was, you know, it was like, oh shit, we're going to have history on Friday. And it's like, oh my, we're actually like legitimate wrestling history. And Outsports, our friend Brian Bell, they did a story which got picked up and aggregated through Yahoo News. So it's like, holy shit, this is like, I get an email with like a, you know wrestling first gay open champion. It's like, oh shit, that's cool. That's really cool. We did it we did it in a small town in Georgia, which unfortunately is not always the most enlightened area in the world, but the fact that we could do it here, and it was openly welcomed, and it was just the biggest pop we've had. And when he, a year and a half later, did his retirement speech, it was in the opposite direction, probably the most emotional moment.
Oh yeah, I would like just fans openly weeping of all ages. I was my jaw on the floor watching at home. It was just, it was a big.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and it was very moving.
Were you on that show? Were you actually there on that show, Kaia?
I wrestled Billy Starks, I believe.
That's right. That was June 2023.
It's my actual debut.
So I knew something was up. I get a text. Can we talk that night? Can we talk tonight? And the funny thing is, AC Mack hates to talk on the telephone. So if he's asking to do it, I know something's not great. Mm-hmm. And he told me, and I'm like, well, let's just do the match with Rico for your last match here as planned. And the next show you come out with a microphone. We just won't advertise you. And we set it up, and it was the first time I've ever had a segment. It had no time. So there's not going to be any time calls. We were live. It was basically like Anthony Henry and Rico Gonzalez wrestle. AC, you're going to go to ringside. Afterwards, whatever happens, happens. And he got in the ring. We had fans openly crying. My own son was AC Max's hero. He's got his hat on and he's sobbing, and it's on the stream. AC goes to comfort him, because I felt like the worst father in the world, because I knew this was coming, and I could not bring myself to tell him. And so we had an 8-year-old just bawling his eyes out because his hero isn't going to be wrestling anymore. And that's real emotion, because there were fans, there were wrestling fans, hitting the hashtag saying that it was all misty, or they were cutting onions, or they were just openly sobbing watching it on TV. And that's it's real emotion. How do you action came about because I was like, what if I did this? What if I ran shows? And from that we get just both sides of pure joy and just pure, it's heartache. It's, when saying goodbye to somebody. He still comes around. We still welcome, but not wrestling. Yeah. It's really cool that we can do that in wrestling. I feel very fortunate.
I certainly didn't intend to start like a 15-minute conversation about AC Mack without him here, but his shadow loomed large.
AC Mack's a good brother.
He is, and I think the way everything went down with him, especially at Action and the Southeast First show, which I had forgotten was a multi-promotion show. So you mentioned that. It really speaks to the quality of what you're doing down there. So can't recommend enough that people go and check out these shows, whether it's streaming or getting tickets.